Financially raw, real, authentic wisdom with Lawrence Oberholzer from Retire Rich and Happy.
We're going to talk about fractional reserve lending and banking. So for those of you who don't know what fractional reserve lending is, have a listen. It's going to be very, very interesting. And like I said, you're welcome to ask me any questions, chat with me, give me some feedback, and also what your thoughts are on the way the banking system works. So let's look at it first. Where does money come from? So I think most of us know that money is printed at the mint, and that is owned by the Reserve Bank. So it is called a central bank, and most countries in the world these days have a central bank. Now, the central bank is the center point of where money and the monetary system of a country is run. Most people think that the central bank is owned by the government, like the Reserve Bank in South Africa, and then also the Federal Reserve in the US. Most people think it is a part of the government, but it is actually not. The central banks are privately owned banks. The Federal Reserve is owned by companies and private individuals. And then the Reserve Bank in South Africa also has shareholders that own the Reserve Bank. In South Africa, the amount of profit or dividends that those shareholders can get is limited. So it's not quite as bad as in the US, where the Reserve Bank is actually a bank run for profit, which creates a bit of an issue, and we'll talk about that now. So the central banks have the authority of the government to create money. How do they create money? They literally decide, in conjunction with the government, how much money needs to go into the economy, and the government then goes and creates what they call government bonds. These bonds are then sent to the central banks, and the bank says, let's say it's 10 billion rand. The government says, listen, we need 10 billion rand in the economy. Or a bank, one of the commercial banks, says, I need 10 billion rand for my commercial purposes. I want to borrow it from the central bank. They then send those bonds to the central bank. The bank then says, great. The central bank, the Reserve Bank in South Africa's case, they say great, and they print 10 billion rands worth of money, which is then deposited into the bank account of the commercial bank or a bank account owned by the government. So it basically gets put into the banking system in South Africa. Now, in today's terms, that is a little bit of a simplification, talking about bonds being sent, money being printed, money being sent somewhere. It doesn't quite work that way anymore. These days, most of that happens on computer. So it is basically a data capture that happens. It gets sent through the bonds. Authorization gets sent to the Reserve Bank. They then create that currency out of thin air because it doesn't exist, that 10 billion rand, and that 10 billion rand is then deposited into a bank account, which puts it into the banking system. So that's the first thing. The money, there was always talk about the gold standard, where money that a government issued had to be backed up with gold, and the value of the currency was linked to gold. Most countries, if not all countries in the world, I'm not 100% sure if there is any countries that are still using the gold standard, but most countries have moved away from the gold standard into what they call fiat currencies. Now, a fiat currency is a currency whose value is backed by its government. So the government then says or gives security for the value of that currency. And it is basically a trust issue. The value of the currency is related to the people's trust or the world's trust that that government won't abuse their power of printing more and more money, because once the government starts doing that, inflation skyrockets and the value of that currency devalues, like what we've seen in Zimbabwe, where we then get hyperinflation of 1,000,000% and those kind of things. That's usually when governments start trying to fix financial problems by printing more money, and they abuse their power of printing money, which then devalues the currency to such an extent that that's basically worth nothing. So a lot of the value that is added to currency or linked to currencies is a trust issue. It is trusting in governments not to abuse their power of printing more and more money. I've had this discussion with people before that says, well, why don't the government just go and print more rands and just put more rands? We don't, like when we had COVID, why didn't the government just take that $500 billion and just print $500 billion worth of rands and put that into the economy? They have the power to do that. The problem with that is the moment they do that, the rand will devalue, inflation will skyrocket, and then we're back to square one, because now instead of having 1 rand being able to buy something, you now need 3 rand to buy the same thing. So it doesn't matter how much money you put into the economy, the value just devalues and you can't buy anything for it. So what happens once it hits or a commercial bank? Now, this is where it gets interesting with fractional reserve lending, because we think that if the government now creates 10 billion rand from thin air through the reserve bank, it then goes into the economy, that 10 billion starts circulating in the country. But that's not quite how it works when it hits the banking system. This is where it gets very, very interesting. The banks have a system of fractional reserve lending. So what does that mean? That means that the amount of money that a bank has to have in cash or available on their system, on the balance sheet, only has to be a fraction of the total amount that they are allowed to lend out. So what that basically means is they can lend money that doesn't exist. So if you do that, you're basically committing fraud. If the banks do that, they call it the banking system. So this is how it works in a nutshell. So basically what happens is the bank gets that deposit of 10 billion rand into their account, and that goes onto their balance sheet as an asset. So now they have an extra 10 billion asset in their account. They only have to keep, let's say, and I don't know exactly what the fractional reserve percentage in South Africa is, but let's say it's 10%. So they have to keep at least 10% of whatever they lend out as cash in their account, which basically means that for the 10 billion that they have created or that they've received, they can lend out 10 times that in loan. So they can lend out 100 billion for the 10 billion that they've received. And that money doesn't really exist. So they lend it out to people at interest where that money doesn't exist in the economy. So people always think that the banks make most of their money because you put money into their account, they pay you 4% interest, and they lend it out at 18% or 22%, and that 14% extra interest is where they make their money. But that's only a small portion of where the bank actually makes their money. The bank makes their money is they lend money from you. When you put a deposit into the bank, they pay you 4% on the money that you deposited into the bank, or you basically loaned to the bank, because the moment you put your money into the bank, they basically owe you the money. So it's not really your money anymore. It is technically the bank's money. You are just a creditor of the bank. So the bank owes you that money. So they pay you 4% interest for putting the money in there, and then they can multiply that money by 10 and then lend it out at 14 or 18%. So just imagine that. They pay 4% on 1,000 Rand. Then they can take 10,000 Rand and lend it out at 18% on 10,000 Rand for only paying 4% on 1,000 Rand. So you see where this is going. So how did we get here? How did banks get to this situation where they can basically create money out of thin air? And that happened when gold was mostly used for currency in the Middle Ages. you had these goldsmiths that kept gold for people. So rich people had gold, they went to the goldsmith. Instead of them carrying it around or keeping it in their houses, they had these people where they kept the gold. And they said, listen, you keep my gold, I'll come and pick up when I need gold, I'll come to you, I'll get it, and then I'll use it to pay for goods, services, etc., etc. These guys then kept the gold safe. And then after a while, they started realizing that very few people ever come and take all of their money all at once. So they realized that, well, they can take some of that and lend it out to other people and gain interest on that. So instead of then giving out gold back to people, they started giving promissory notes. And that's where money, bank notes, comes from. Promissory notes that says, us as the goldsmith is good for this amount of money. So I'm giving this person the authority to trade with this note up to that amount of money. But they started giving out more of these promissory notes than they actually had in reserve. So that's where fractional reserve lending started to come out. So they could then charge interest on money that they didn't have. And that's how the whole fractional reserve banking system starts. So how does this affect us? And how does it affect the economy? So Warren says, so let's start our own bank and make some money. Yep, that's if it only was that easy. That's why it is so damn hard to get a banking license, and why people are so keen on getting a banking license. The Discovery Bank, who started a while ago, that's why they were so keen to start a bank, because you just multiply money when you have a bank because of the fractional reserve system. So those huge banking buildings is not because they just charge a little bit more interest for lending out, or they make it out of their transactional fees. Guys, they make money by just creating money out of thin air. So, how does this actually affect the economy? The fact that money gets created out of thin air. So, the first thing we need to understand is that all money in circulation is owed to someone. So I want you to have that sink in quickly. Every rand you have is owed to someone somewhere, and it all ends up eventually being owed to the Reserve Bank. So that means every single rand in circulation in South Africa and the world has somebody that is owed that money. So if everybody could pay back everything they owe immediately, there would be no money left. So because everybody would pay everybody else, and eventually there would be zero money in circulation. So the fact that there's money in circulation means there is debt, and debt is what drives the economy. So which is a little bit of a messed up system, the fact that everything has to be run through debt. Now, here's the kicker. The system is set up so that not only is everything owed, all money in circulation is owed to someone, but all money in circulation, there's interest to be paid on that money. So what that in essence mean is that there is never ever enough money in circulation to pay back the debt from the money in circulation. Does that make sense? So if we all pay back all the debts, immediately there will be zero money in circulation, because every single rand needs to be paid to someone because it's owed to someone somewhere. But if we add interest to that, there's not enough money to pay the interest. So the interest has to come from somewhere. The only way we can get the money to pay the interest is to create more money. So then what happens is there's not enough money in circulation, more money gets created, which deteriorates the value of the money to pay the interest on the debt. But the moment that happens, that money accrues interest again. So immediately when that happens, there's not enough money to pay the interest on the debt. And that is the cycle. And that is why inflation keeps going, because There is never enough money to pay the debt, which means we need to create more money, which devalues the value of money, which creates inflation, which creates the fact that there's not enough money to pay the debt, and we have to go into deeper debt. To give you an idea, looking at the biggest economy in the world, which is the US economy. This is the situation, how the US economy and the US national debt has increased over the last decade or so. Now, they are the biggest economy in the world, so it happens with all economies. And also what I want you guys to see is the acceleration of this decay, this happening over time. So in 2000 and, let me just think quickly, what was that year? 2009, when Barack Obama became the US president, the total US debt, national debt for the US was about just over $6 trillion. Now, just think about that. That's another thought. To give you guys an idea, because we tend to think that billion and trillion is very close to one another, because we sort of throw it around like it's almost the same thing. To give you an idea between the difference between a billion and a trillion, a billion seconds ago was 36 years ago. That is a billion seconds into the past, is 36 years. A trillion seconds is 36,000 years. So just let that sink in quickly, the difference between a billion and a trillion. It's the difference between 36 years and 36,000 years. So a trillion is a hell of a lot of money. So in 2009, the US debt was about $6.8 trillion. Currently, we are sitting in 2021, so it is, 12 years later. The US debt is now sitting at about $28 trillion. So they have gone from about 6.8 to 28 trillion in 12 years. In the last year alone, it has gone up by about between $3 and $4 trillion, and they want to expand on that again. So you can see that the system perpetuates, and it goes faster and faster and faster. Another way to look at this is to look at the amount of money in circulation, currency in circulation, to show the effect of the fact that there's not enough money to pay off all the debt, which means more money needs to be created. To give you guys an idea, the US Reserve Bank, the Federal Reserve, was created in 1917. That was when the Federal Reserve Bank was created, and they started using a central bank. Now, at that point in time, there was about $4 billion in circulation. That is the total amount of dollars in circulation in the world, $4 billion. By 2000, that increased to about $595 billion in the year 2000. So close to 600 billion, not even a trillion, $600 billion by the year 2000. Currently, cash in circulation, dollars, is about $2.2 trillion in circulation currently. So we've gone, and this is actual currency in circulation. So we've gone from about 5 billion all the way up to $2.2 trillion. It's just escalating at a rapid rate. Okay, so we've got a question from Fricky. He says, my question is, what happens when a bank goes under? I remember when I was younger, there was a bank that went under, Sambo. Yep, exactly, Sambo. What happens to your investment in that bank? Do you lose everything, or will the Reserve Bank step in on the bank's behalf? Okay, so very, very interesting question, Fricky. And yeah, we all remember Sambo. I think I just started in the financial services industry when that Sambo Bank happened. And everybody was like, Sambo is giving the highest interest and it's so safe because it's in a bank, etc., etc. And then it went bankrupt. So first and foremost, what you need to understand is the moment you put your money in the bank, your money is then owned by the bank. You basically technically give your money or lend your money to the bank, and they owe you that money. So you become a creditor of the bank. What that means is if the bank cannot pay your money back, then you have to sue them. You can't take them to court for stealing your money. You can't tell them or say to them that, listen, they have created or they've committed a crime because they're not giving your money back. It is not theft. It is a default on a loan. So you have the same kind of systems that you have to follow with any other creditor that defaults on a loan. And that is actually a scary thing to think about, because we all tend to think that our money is safe when we put it in the bank because it's our money is in the bank. It's not really your money in the bank anymore. It is the bank owes you a certain amount of money. So when the bank defaults, it's like any other company that defaults on its loans. They can't pay the money back, therefore legal routes have to be taken. The Reserve Bank does give some security, but the Reserve Bank can't stand security for all the money that the bank lends out. As far as I understand it, and again, I'm up for correction here, the Reserve Bank will stand security for the amount of money that they have lent out to the bank, not necessarily what the bank has lent out to others or the bank owes to other people. But I'm up for correction on that one. So there is some protection from the Reserve Bank, but very, very limited protection. Basically, to put it bluntly, you're screwed if the bank goes under. It is like the VBS bank scandal. That money's gone. There's liquidators that come in. There's business rescue that comes in, and they try to get assets for the depositors. But more often than not, you've lost that money. So what happened it's actually quite an interesting story. In the early 30s in the US, when the depression, just before the depression hit, what basically happened is that the bigger banks wanted to close down the smaller banks in the US. So there was this banking war happening in the US. So what then happened is the bigger banks started creating rumors about the small banks, saying that this bank is going to go bankrupt, trying to create what they call a bank run. So what does a bank run means? A bank run means, and this is similar to what happened to Sambo as well. What happens in a bank run is if everybody who has money in a specific bank goes into the bank today and say, I want to withdraw my money, the bank can't pay you. The bank doesn't have the money to pay you everything that they owe you. So if everybody does it all at once, the bank goes bankrupt. That's the reality of it. So what they did is they artificially created these rumors with the small banks that their bank was financially in trouble, which then instigated a bank run. What then happens is everybody ran to that bank and said, I want to pull my money out of the bank. The bank couldn't pay. They went into liquidation, and then these big banks bought over the small banks and said, we'll take over the liability, and then we will honor that deposits. And by that way, they got rid of all the smaller banks, and they just swallowed up these smaller banks. So, that was a long explanation for a relatively short question, but I hope that answers your question, Fricky. It's interesting if all of us go to a bank today and say, listen, I want to get my money out all at once, then that's it for the bank. They are gone. So we're talking about banking, money. Where does money come from? How fractional reserve banking works, or fractional reserve lending works, and the impact of that. I was just thinking, such a positive topic I have this morning. It's all about doom and gloom and how bad it is. It's not all bad if you start understanding how it works and start using it for your benefit. And that is why the key is to be on the receiving end of either income or the receiving end of debt payments. So for example, create business assets that generate income through leverage, or create fixed asset that creates rental income or those kind of income. That is how you start getting to the point where people pay you instead of you paying interest and paying for other people's loans. So so it is important to have your strategies, but also understand that having your money in the bank will never make you financially free. It will not get you to financial retirement. Just building capital assets won't get you there. And unfortunately, that is a lot of what we've been taught over the last 40 odd years, is save enough money so that you can live off the interest. The problem is the system is set up that will never ever work. Firstly, inflation, the eroding effect of inflation is just too much, and the amount of money that you have to save up to create the income that you need just is not practical. So you have to create different kinds of assets to generate income. So you use capital assets, but only as part of the whole system. You start with business assets, and you yourself is a business asset as well, because a lot of people think that if they work for an income, they don't own a business, they're not a business owner. Well, you are a business. You are a business of one. You are selling your expertise, your skills to your company for a specific amount per month. So you need to increase your business's value by increasing your skills, etc., etc. So you are also a business asset. That business asset generates income, but you need to create other business assets as well by becoming an entrepreneur, and that is part of what we teach our students. Secondly, you then use the profits from your business assets to create capital assets. But the capital assets is used to then get converted into fixed assets or income generating assets. An asset that generates an income as a result of the asset, not what you do in the asset. And that is the key to retirement, is to have income generating assets that will then give you passive income. And that is what we teach. So if you want to find out more about that, you're welcome to go to our website, retirehappy.co.za, and go attend our webinar where we show you exactly step by step how we teach you to get to the point where you can build income generating assets for yourself. Just a final thought on the fractional reserve lending. This is what we need to get our heads around. So you buy a house, the bank lends you money for the house that you buy, but the money that the bank lends you actually costs them nothing, because it's not their money that they are lending you. So it's not costing them anything, because they are creating the money out of thin air through fractional reserve lending. So they are creating this money out of nothing, giving you money that doesn't actually exist to buy a property that does exist. And then if you don't pay back the money that didn't exist in the first place, they take back the property that actually does exist. And then they can make money out of that property by selling it on an auction, and that money actually exists. So on that positive note, let's move on to what does it hold for the future. Are we going down a rabbit hole, running towards a cliff, and the whole economy will collapse at some point? Well, the problem is that is a possible scenario. I don't want to say we are going to get there, but it is a possible scenario. So how does cryptocurrency fit into this thing? Because we've sort of been told through the hype of the whole crypto revolution that this is the savior for the monetary system. This is the future of money. Bitcoin is going to be it. You need to get into Bitcoin to invest and get as much money as possible. Because that is the future. And a lot of people ask my opinion on that, and it's not a very popular opinion because most people are drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking that it is the future and they're going to become instant millionaires by investing in Bitcoin. So here's my opinion on it. The first thing is, I think the cryptocurrencies that are in effect at the moment is probably the biggest Ponzi scheme the world has ever seen. The whole bubble that is being created, the value in Bitcoin, in cryptocurrency, is a completely inflated value because it is not linked to any specific value, any specific benefit that it creates. It is just a value created artificially through a supply and demand situation. So if everybody wants to buy Bitcoin and very few people want to sell Bitcoin, the price will increase. If nobody wants to buy Bitcoin anymore and people want to sell it because the price is dropping, the price will start dropping faster and faster and faster because there's no underlying real value to cryptocurrency. Now, a lot of people say, well, it is not supposed to be a currency. It is supposed to be a store of value. Well, the store value needs to be something that has an underlying value which cryptocurrency doesn't have. So that is my concern about that. Does that mean that people aren't making money in cryptocurrency? No, there is always people making money. In the dot-com bubble that was in the early 2000s, people made millions through the dot-com bubble. But what eventually happened? The dot-com bubble burst and people lost millions. Because if the value doesn't create more value, it is just value because of a buy and sell scenario, a supply and demand scenario. So where does the value and the future actually lie in cryptocurrency? So like I said, I don't believe that Bitcoin is going to be the global currency in 10 years from now. And guys, again, I would be happy to eat my own words, and you can throw this recording back in my face if I'm wrong, but this is my opinion. I don't think Bitcoin is going to be the global currency, or any of the ones that are there at the moment are going to be the currency that everybody's going to use in 10 years from now. What I do believe is that blockchain technology, the underlying technology that creates cryptocurrency, will be used for currency exchange for the monetary system. So there's two things that we need to look at here, is the actual currencies and then the blockchain technology that runs the currencies. So the currency itself is something that is artificially inflated in value. The blockchain technology that underlines it is a revolutionary piece of technology that makes sure that these transactions can happen without a centralized banking system having to keep ledgers of all the transactions that happen. It happens, there's trust, it can happen anonymously, and it can be checked, and it can't be hacked. That is very important. Most banking systems at this stage has centralized servers, centralized computer systems that can be hacked, and that creates a security risk. The blockchain technology creates a system that cannot be hacked the way the blockchain is set up, and that creates a more secure financial system and a system of exchange of financial value. So I do believe that blockchain technology is what's going to revolutionize the way we work with money, the way money works, and also the way the banking system works. The banks will have to adapt. I've seen, I did some research this morning, and there's about 15 countries in the world that are currently experimenting and starting to look at creating cryptocurrencies backed by that specific government. So I think that's probably where we are going to start going with government-backed cryptocurrencies instead of these individual cryptocurrencies. I mean, China already have their one, I think they call it, that is their government-backed cryptocurrency. So I think the crypto world, the blockchain technology will revolutionize the way we work with banking, but I don't think cryptocurrency in the sense the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the Dogecoins, those guys are going to be the future. So I personally will not put my money into cryptocurrency as an investment. Bugnish says, glad you mentioned blockchain tech. Smart contracts are the future. Yes, that is where I think the value lies, is in the technology, because the blockchain technology, now I'm not an IT guy, so if you guys have more information, I'll give you how I understand it, which is very limited. I'm a financial guy, I'm not really an IT guy, but I have a little bit of a grasp of it. So what blockchain technology also does is it has applications outside of finance. It has applications in, like Bugnish says, smart contracts. So they have technology that you can create a smart contract through a blockchain, and to companies, the contract automatically enforces the terms of the contract without any of the two parties being able to default on that. So it creates those smart contracts. They're also looking at blockchain technology for the music industry, because at this stage, I think me and Jacques had a discussion a while ago regarding how do music people, how do they make money these days? Because I can listen to music free anyway. So they now starting to use blockchain technology for music. So if somebody creates a song and you go and download or you listen to the song, the blockchain keeps record of the cost involved and the actual artist gets the money. They're taking away the middlemen, the recording studios that takes up all the money from these artists. The same with the banking system. The blockchain technology will start taking away the middlemen and the cost involved in the middlemen, especially looking at things like people sending money home from different countries. So you have a lot of people in South Africa that come from places like Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and they earn money and they have to send that money home to their family. And the cost involved in getting money across the border and the time it takes is astronomical, especially for people that are not earning a lot of money. Through the blockchain technology, they can create systems whereby these people can transfer money and move money to families for much, much lower cost and much easier, which means that value gets created for those people. So I think the blockchain technology is where the future lies, not necessarily the cryptocurrencies that we have at the moment. Okay, guys, that is my time. We are 10:56. We have 4 minutes left. If you want me to chat more about cryptocurrencies and my thoughts on it, I mean, I only could touch on it for like 5 minutes now. If you want me to talk about it more, I will be happy to do a show. You can send me an email at lawrence@retirehappy.co.za if you have any questions regarding it, or if you have any comments, or you want to tell me what an idiot I am and how much money you've made from it. I'm open. Tell me if I'm an idiot and why you think I'm an idiot. I'm happy to listen to everybody's opinion on the matter. And I'm happy to change my mind on it as well. But at this point, I just feel it's another bubble like the .com bubble. Guys, thank you very much. It was great to chat with all of you. Warren says, awesome topic. Thanks, Warren, for that feedback. And Fricky says, thanks, Lawrence. Let the people join us Saturday. Yes, yeah. So we're having our family day on Saturday for Retire Happy at Grizzlies in Pretoria. So if you are wanting to come out for a fun day with your family, There's slides, there's swimming pools. We're going to have a braai, and just come and meet us. You're welcome to come through. You can come in at the gate. You don't have to book ahead of time, or you can just email frikkie@retirehappy.co.za, and he can give you more specific details, and you guys can come and join us. It's going to be a fun day, and we're entertaining a few people from a charity as well, which is going to be great. I look forward to seeing everybody there. And thanks everybody. Have a great day and a great weekend. Cheers everyone. Hi guys, Lawrence here. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it informative and you got some benefit out of it. Please add in the comments any questions you might have or any other topics that you would like me to talk about. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell button so that you can get notified of any new videos that we post so you don't miss anything. Thanks guys, see you around.